Alright guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today. For this one, we are in Nova Gorica, which is kind of in the western part of Slovenia, right on the Italian border with the Italian city of Gorica. But we're going to check out Pivovarna Reservoir Dogs, or Reservoir Dogs Craft Brewery, whatever name you want to give them. So we've reviewed many of their beers on the channel before, and yeah, it's going to be really cool to visit their little brewery tap room that they have. So we'll do as we always do, we'll go in, we'll have a little look around, we'll try some of the beers, and we'll just see how it goes. But yeah, very, very cool to finally get a chance to visit Pivovarna Reservoir Dogs here in Nova Gorica. Let's get started. Alright guys, so yeah, here is the sign I was standing in front of a little minute ago. But yeah, the light here will go on in a second. Yep, there we go. So yeah, the tap room is actually right at the back of the brewery, and this is just a little kind of industrial road here, which is it's kind of cool. So the main brewery is just over, it's just over sort of this way. But yeah, when you come in, you basically come down the stairs, and then yeah, they have all of this, which is kind of cool. So they've got this nice kind of outside decking area. There you can see over here the Reservoir Dogs Brewery, Nova Gorica, and yeah, they've got their kitchen and things here, which obviously at this time of the evening is kind of shut down and things. But yeah, pizza ovens and everything. Very, very cool. We'll have a little look at the food menu later and see what it's all about. But yeah, they have their bar through here, which is very, very cool. And yeah, you can have a little look at this. So Ryan is already enjoying his blonde ale, but yeah, you can see the bar is like this. We'll have a proper look at the tap list in a little minute. They've also got a fridge stocked with different things that you can take away. And yeah, we'll have a look at this properly. But there you can see the Reservoir Dogs symbol. But they have a lovely little bar in here. Obviously it's quite quiet because the Ljubljana Craft Beer Week is on. But to be honest, this is quite nice for filming because it means that we can have a proper look around, and the video sound should be quite good. But yeah, we're going to do a couple of beer tastings, and we'll get on with that starting from now. So I hope you enjoy these, and I'll catch you in just a second. So yeah, a little closer look at the tap list of what they have on tap tonight. So you can see, first off, Grim Reaper IPA, one of their classic beers, the Crux Fruited Goza. Single Blondie, oh that's what my cousin is on just now, I need to ask him about that a bit later. The Incubo Saison, Crazy Sister Double New England IPA, Conqueror Session IPA, the Kronberger Pils, the Warrior Pale Ale, the Little Sister Session New England IPA, the Kronberger Märzen, the Starvation Black IPA, the Lone Wolf Single Hop, the Goza, the CGS, the Mea Culpa Imperial IPA, Hazy Sister New England, and Batch 50 Imperial Stout. So yeah, lovely little tap list here for us tonight at Reservoir Dogs. Let's get started on this. Alright guys, so here is our degustation flight. So first off, we have the Kronberger Märzen, we have the Crazy Sister New England Double IPA, the Grim Reaper, one of their classic IPAs, the Starvation, the Black IPA, the Mea Culpa, which is their old school West Coast IPA, and then we have the Batch 50 Imperial Stout. So we'll change the order of these a little bit slightly and just go through them from from light to dark, I should say. Yeah, let's get started on these. Pretty sure this is going to be awesome. Alright guys, well, let's get started then here with tasting number one at the Reservoir Dogs tap room in Nova Gorica. So yeah, the first beer that we're going to have a little look at is one from their Kronberger Lager range. So yeah, this one is the Kronberger Märzen. I believe it comes in at 5.8% ABV. And I haven't tried this one before. I have had the Kronberger Pils before, and I know that that is a very, very nice beer. So yeah, the Märzen then, when this one poured, it had a nice finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. That has of course faded away a little bit now, but you can see not too much in the way of visible carbonation, just one or two big bubbles going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look really nice little kind of really nice just very smooth looking beer actually. So I would say that colour wise, this one comes across as being a nice sort of pale golden straw. Märzens can be very, very light in colour, but they can also be a little bit more ambery if you like. But yeah, the common thing was that Märzens were brewed in March to be drunk in about October time. So the Märzen is the common Oktoberfest beer style. And the reason for that was that in Germany it was banned actually to brew during the summer because the temperatures weren't right. This was before the time of artificial refrigeration, of course. But yeah, this one, certainly one of the lighter Märzens that I've come across in recent times. But yeah, that is possible when it comes to this style, we should say. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go. Yeah, so aroma-wise then, this one, it comes across with actually quite a nice yeasty and almost slightly kind of crackery note to it. And I remember this of the Kronberger Pils. It had this really crackery and sort of yeasty note to it, and you get that out of this one right away. So they must be using a similar malt base and potentially a similar yeast strain as well actually. So yeah, this I think should be quite interesting in that respect. But yeah, backbone of this beer, straight away you get a nice little bit of that Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing, that lovely soft kind of cream crackery note. On top of that, a little bit of a bread crusty note, some soft white bread in there, and yeah, I think it goes together really nicely in that sense. As you would expect from the Märzen, it gives you a little bit of a kind of sweet caramelly note on top, a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of thing too. But yeah, it's definitely one of the lighter and more kind of bready leaning Märzens that I've had in recent times, and especially when it's 5.8% ABV, you might expect it to just be a little bit sweeter and a little bit more sort of caramelly and things. But like I say, there's a whole spectrum of flavours that the Märzen can sort of lean towards and things like this. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, for me, this one actually has a little bit of a kind of spicy character on the green side of things. There's a little bit of earthiness in there, of course, a little bit of a bright, slightly spicy floral aromatic note, as I've said, then a wee bit of a zesty, kind of grassy character. So yeah, it smells pretty nice. On the fruity side of things, you've got a little bit of a kind of sultana note, you know, dry, white, green, grapey characters, a little bit of an oily, peary sort of thing. But yeah, I think it goes together very, very nicely from the aroma side of things. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beers before you get stuck into them. But we're going to have a taste of this now. So this is the Kronberger Märzen coming in at 5.8% ABV. Let's look at this. Sláinte, skål, cheers, na zdravie. Yeah, that's pretty damn nice actually. I really like how that goes together. Very clean, very light Märzen for me. And it's kind of as I described in the aroma. So you've got a little bit of that sort of crackery kind of thing forming the backbone of the beer. One or two little woody notes toward the middle of that front third of your palate. On top of that, you've got a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty, sort of fresh bread crusty character, some brown bread in there. And then, yeah, you've got a few little brown sugar notes. So yeah, backbone of that kind of brown sugar note is a little bit McVitie's digestive biscuit-like for sure, but in the dead centre of the palate you do get a little touch of that straight up sweet caramel. But like I said, this beer is very much, this beer really is very much a kind of bready leaning Märzen in compared to the other ones that I've had in recent times. And it feels very light and very drinkable. It's not as boozy as some of the examples of this style that you will come across. But the malt base is very nice, yeah, bready, crackery, a little bit of biscuity notes to it, but yeah, quite bready and crackery leaning in my opinion. On the hoppy side of things, it is pretty much as we described in the aroma, a little touch of smooth earthiness in the back corners of the palate as you move further forward, a little bit herbal, wee touch floral and aromatic at the front corners of the palate, then round the front curve of the tongue, just a little bit lighter and grassy. Front third of your palate and the fruity side of things, the base of that front third of your palate is most definitely a sort of, it's most definitely a sort of, I would say, smooth sort of white bready note. But on top of that, you've got a little bit of a kind of that sultana raisiny, that sultana dry white green grapey character that I was talking about. And then yeah, you also have just a little bit of that oily kind of peary thing coming out of this one. So it goes together really, it does go together really nicely from that perspective in my mind. But yeah, it's a thumbs up from me in that regard. It's very much kind of what you would expect of the Märzen, but in some ways it actually reminds me a little bit more of, because of the breadiness that this beer has, it actually reminds me a little bit more of some of the kind of Czech late sack beers that I've had, the sort of Czech amber lagers. It's a little bit like that, but it does have the kind of German crispness to it. As I said to you, the main difference for me between the Czech lagers and the German lagers is that the Czech ones tend to be a little bit more bready and kind of creamy and yeasty, if you like, whereas the German ones are lighter and crisp. So the mouthfeel of this one definitely has a little bit of that. So yeah, for me, top end of light bodied, crisp carbonation, quite a smooth beer though. The malt base has a little bit of graininess to it, a little bit of dryness and sweetness. The IBUs I think are a sort of standard 15-20, as you would expect for this style. Then you've also got that little bit of wet fruity character as well. But yeah, overall a very, very nice beer, this one. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. Is it as good as the Kronberger Pils? I'm not quite sure. It would be cool to do them side to side at some point, but yeah, maybe that is something for the future. But that's the end of beer tasting number 1, the Kronberger Märzen here at Reservoir Dogs Taproom in Nova Gorica. Catch you guys in just a second with the next tasting. Alright guys, so just to let you have a little look at the sort of prices we're talking here. So yeah, you can buy a little degustation set as they call it, or you can get the beers as 0.3 litres or 0.5. So yeah, you're talking between about €3.30 and €4 for a 0.3. Depends of course on the style and the alcohol content. But yeah, that's somewhere in the region of like, you know, £3 sterling to like about $4.50 American for a 0.3. On the 0.5, you're talking €4.30 to about €5, depending on what beer it is. And so that'll work out somewhere between, yeah, like £3.75 sterling to maybe about $5.50 American, just for those of you watching in different parts of the world. But yeah, you can get some tasting sets here. You can get a 4 or a 6, and you can get different sizes and things. So yeah, it's €6, €9 or €12. And yeah, I think I'm going for the larger one there with the 6. So €12 is about £10 sterling, maybe $14 American, something like that. You can also get some soft drinks as well. But yeah, that's just to give you a rough idea of the prices that we're paying here at the Reservoir Dogs Tap Room. So yeah, there you go. Alright guys, well, time for beer tasting number 2. So for this one, we are going to do one of their more kind of classic beers actually. I'm really curious to try this one again and see what it's like. So for this one, we are going to have a little look at the Grim Reaper. So this one comes in at 7% ABV, and it's an old school West Coast IPA. So yeah, when this beer poured, it had about the solid finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. You can see that this beer has a lovely, slight kind of amber hint to it, but it's not the most amber, it's not the darkest amber of West Coast IPA that you're going to come across. But yeah, 1 or 2 little bubbles visible in this one, but not too much in the way of visible carbonation. Remember, of course, the colour of your beer depends on the types of malt that you use. The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. Any barrel aging that you do, any adjuncts you put in will also play a role there. But when it comes to different kinds of IPA, you normally don't have to care about the latter 2 that I just mentioned there. It is mainly type of malt and the length of your wort boil. But yeah, this I would say is one of the lighter coloured West Coast IPAs that you're going to come across. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Oh yeah, that smells very, very nice. This one actually has a very, very pungent aroma actually, and it's been a good few years since I tried this beer, and that's one of the really cool things about finally getting to visit here finally getting to visit Nova Gorica and having a look at this. You get to try these beers that you've tried years ago, and you also get to try new things from a brewery that you know kind of fairly well actually. But yeah, aroma wise, this is quite pungent actually, almost to the point where it's like slightly minty and fresh. But yeah, let's break this down for you then and describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth. Yeah, so malty side of things, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive bread crusty character to this one. I say a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuity note, not bread crusty character. That's one of the first things in the malty side of the beer. There's a wee bit of bread crust underneath. There is a little bit of that kind of brown bready character as well. But to me, this is actually quite a light smelling West Coast IPA. You get that biscuity note, but you also get a wee bit of that kind of boozy caramelly note too. So yeah, sweet boozy caramel, something you'd expect of the style, but quite a lot of that bright McVitie's digestive biscuity note, and I really like that about this beer, I have to say that for sure. Yeah, aroma wise, that is very, very nice on the malty side of things. It's pretty straight shooting, it's exactly as you'd expect from the style, but yeah, at 7%, it is leaning towards that kind of boozy side of things. If I remember rightly, the hardcore, the punk IPA, sorry, from Brewdog back in the day was in the region of like 6.8%, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this one at 7% is just a little bit more than that. So yeah, malty backbone of this one is just as you would think. On the hoppy side of things, classic West Coast. Remember, West Coast IPAs have 3 different types of hoppings. Early edition hops, which are the ones that give you all the bitterness within the first hour of the wort boil. Late edition hops, which are the ones in the last half hour of the wort boil. They give you a little bit of bitterness, but also a good bit of flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping is the one that is completely flavour and aroma. So New England IPAs only use the latter two, mainly speaking, generally speaking, but the West Coast IPAs use all 3. So this one, you can smell straight away with the pungency of the green component of this one. This has a lot of early edition hop. Yeah, so a little bit of earthiness to it, but that takes a backseat to the big, bright floral aromaticity that the beer has. This one also has a nice, big, zesty, grassy component. And I would say that about this one, generally speaking. It does lean toward that kind of lemony, limey, zesty side of the spectrum. So keep that in mind. On the fruity side of things, yeah, there's a little bit of kind of tropical mango or passion fruit in there, but I'm getting a lot of lime out of this one. This beer's a big, big, oily, sort of lemony, limey thing for me. Yeah, this is an absolute monster when you consider it's only 7%. If I was to smell this blind, I'd think this was a big, you know, 8-9%er. This is a beast of a beer. So it's probably why they called it the Grim Reaper, and from what I've heard from the guys behind the bar, it is one of their best sellers. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go on. It smells absolutely lovely. This is the Grim Reaper, a 7% West Coast IPA. Sláinte, skål, cheers, na zdravie. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Straight shooting beer, this one, not quite as bitter as I remember it, but remember they've taken the bitterness of West Coast IPAs back a little bit since, yeah, they've taken the bitterness of West Coast IPAs back a little bit since the New Englands have come in and been the big thing. But yeah, it's still really nice, solid, oily and, you know, fruity, juicy West Coast IPA, this one. I like it, it's good. But, as I say, a bit different from what I remember. But yeah, very nice. I do remember back in the day the Slovenian IPAs were always a little bit more oily and fruity, and I always enjoyed that, and this one still has that. So let's break it down and describe it as we always do. So, on the malty backbone then, a little bit of a fresh kind of brown bready bread crust, absolutely. On top of that, you get a little bit of a kind of, on top of that, you get a little bit of that kind of fresh, kind of wholemeal brown bready kind of note out of it, which I really do quite like. And then, yeah, you've got a good bit of brown sugar sitting on top of it. There's maybe a little bit of a kind of crackery sort of thing, yeah. As I say, yeah, bread crust, fresh brown bread, a little bit of a kind of crackery sort of thing. And then you also have that just the brown sugar notes there. So in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a bit of a straight up sweet caramel. But as you move out towards the edges of the palate, it's a little bit more McVitie's digestive biscuit-like, and you could kind of tell it was going to be like that from the aroma. So it kind of lives up to that. On the hoppy side of things then, the green component, back corners of the palate, absolutely, there's a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's got a good, kind of nice, bright floral aromaticity, but it gives you a little bit of oily character out there. But then around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, but in fairness, the grassiness is both a little bit oily, but it does give you a good wee bit of a kind of zesty note as well. So I really like how this one goes together. So yeah, lovely green component to this one. It has that kind of oily thing that you'd expect, or that I've known from Slovenian IPAs over the years, but it still gives you that nice little bit of bite and things that you expect of the West Coast IPAs. But as I say, this is not quite as bitter as I remember it being back in the day, and that's probably just because of the emergence of the New England IPAs. So, fruity side of things then, let's look at that. This beer for me, fruity side of things is kind of what I was picking up, similar to what I was picking up in the aroma. So base of that front third of your palate, a little bit bready and bread crusty, and that goes together nicely. At the back of that front third of your palate, maybe a little touch of passion fruit. As you move further forward, it becomes a more kind of juicy mango sort of thing, but I'm getting wee bits of apricot and things underneath. But then, yeah, it really leans a little bit more toward, it's got a little bit of an almost like gooseberry type thing, and also a little touch of a kind of limey note for me. So it's really interesting. I can't remember what hops are in this one. Maybe a little bit of Equinaut or something like that, or Motueka, who knows. They've got loads of hops here in Slovenia. The Dragon, the Wolf, and all of these kind of things. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that going on in this one for me. Maybe it has got a little bit of Styrian Wolf in it actually, because it has a wee bit of that kind of melony character the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, a little bit of a mango-y note, some, yeah, a little bit of mango, a little bit of apricot and things, then a sort of gooseberry, melony and slightly limey note on the front part of the palate for me. But really nice West Coast IPA, as I've said. I think this is very, very good. To round off then, the mouthfeel. For me, top end of mid-body, the carbonation is very smooth. It's got that nice oily slickness that you expect of a West Coast IPA. And yeah, IBU wise, I think this is maybe about 40 IBUs. It feels a little touch more bitter, but I think it's not that much more bitter than the New Englands are these days. So 30 to 40 IBUs. Malt bases, the malt base is nice and smooth. As we say, it's got a little bit of sweetness, but mainly kind of bready, and you've also got that nice oily fruitiness that you expect of this style. And this one has a good balance between being a little bit more, it's got a little bit of tropical character, but mainly it leans towards that kind of more limey, citrusy, zesty kind of thing. So yeah, that is the end of tasting number 2, the Grim Reaper, 7%. West Coast IPA. Let's leave it at that for this one, and we'll go on to number 3 in just a second. Alright guys, so a little quick look then at what is available here in the Reservoir Dogs fridge for you to take home. So as you can see, the first 2 shelves have lots of very nice barley sour beers that you can look at. So the first one is the Atsa, which they're saying is a sort of amber sour beer. Then they have the Mayahul, which is a barrel-aged Goza. And then they have this one, the Seer, which is a Madana Fructus. I'm not sure exactly what this one is, but you can see these beers are available. The Itza and the Seer are available both as sort of 350s and 750s. But yeah, the Mayahul is only available in the kind of 350 one. They have this beer here, which really caught my fancy, the Spirit of Isla, a barrel-aged barley wine. I can imagine that would be an absolute monster. So maybe I need to have a little look at that. But yeah, they have the Crux, which is a Goza, the Sour Sister, Sour New England IPA, the Crazy Sister, New England, the Hazy Sister, the Little Sister, which is a Session New England, Lone Wolf, which is one of the old school beers I tried, brewed with the Styrian Wolf, Slovenian hop, lovely melon flavours you get out of this one. If you come down, they have Warrior, which is one of their old school beers, the Pale Ale, another Sour Sister there, Conqueror Session IPA, the Grim Reaper IPA, the Starvation Black IPA. Then down here, yeah, the Black Rose Porter, Single Blondie, the 2 Kronberger Lagers, the Märzen and the Pils, another can of Warrior, and then yeah, a few other ones that we've seen just a little while ago. So yeah, lovely little fridge here for you to get some beers and take away. Pretty cool. Alright guys, so time for beer tasting number 3 then. So our next beer is called Crazy Sister. So this is a style that I haven't had from Reservoir Dogs before. New England, hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this should be quite nice. This beer, once again, poured with a solid finger of a frothy, kind of, I would say, cream-coloured head, not quite perfect white, and you can see that colour-wise, this one is a lovely kind of bright mango juice. And you can see that the You know, I always like comparing New England IPAs to different kinds of fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But yeah, I think comparing this one to a lovely bright mango juice is appropriate. It looks very, very nice. But you can see for a 7%, the level of haze on this one is pretty impressive. Remember, the level of haze in these New England IPAs depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree the yeast. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. There is a little line of bubbles going up this side of the glass, but I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on camera for you. But yeah, appearance-wise, this is pretty much what you would expect from a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see what we get from this one. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away that smells really, really nice. So as I've said to you before, for me there are 6 things to think about with a New England IPA. The sort of farmhousey, yeasty side of things, the ripening and grainy part of it. These two are a little bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, but you also have oaty creaminess, wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, and the sweet component to think about too. And quite often these beers will display different things from those different components that I've just mentioned. But most European New England IPAs, in my experience, are based on the kind of wheaty side of things, such as Trillium, or the more oaty side of things, such as kind of Treehouse. Most European New England IPAs are a bit like that. For me, on the aroma, this one actually smells as if it's quite well balanced between the wheaty side of things and from the oaty side of it. But it smells lovely. I'm going to say straight away, comes across really nicely. But for me as well, it's also leaning towards that citrusy, zesty side of the spectrum. So let's just break this down and describe it for you a little bit more in depth. Let's do it. So, yeah. Malty side of things then, definitely a little touch of bread crust and cracker forming the backbone of the beer, but on top of that, lots of fresh white bread. You can smell that the wheat is just densifying it out, that the wheat is making the beer seem very, very thick. But yeah, you've also got that good little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose too, which is great. But on top of that, you can smell that lovely big oaty creamy note out of this one. You're also getting a little bit of the sweetness from the oaty character as well. So there's just a little touch of that kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy thing that you would expect of this New England IPA style. So the malty side of this one and the yeasty side of course, is very nice. So on the hoppy side of things then, the green component first off, at the back of the nose you do get a little touch of earthiness. There is a lot of floral aromaticity out this one. It smells very, very bright, and as I said to you earlier, New England IPAs rely on late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, and also dry hopping. They don't have so much in the way of early addition hopping, and that's why they're not quite as bitter normally. So for me, this one has a lovely, very bright floral aromaticity. There's also a good little bit of grassiness in there. It's got that sort of fresh, wet, just wet, freshly cut grass kind of vibe to it. There's a lot of that coming out of this beer. And on the fruity side of things, again, I'm really finding that this one leans towards that sort of lemon, limey, citrusy end of the spectrum. So yeah, for me, there is a little bit of passion fruit to this one. You've got a little bit of a juicy mango, but at the same time, I get quite a lot of lime out of this one. I'd be very curious to know what the hop fill is on this. It wasn't listed on the website on the Untappd as far as I could see, but yeah, for me this again is very, very limey leaning, and I think, having not had a Reservoir Dogs beer for quite a long time until I've come back to Slovenia, I'd kind of forgotten how citrusy leaning these beers were. But of course your palate is constantly changing, you're constantly getting different things. So yeah, this one really is reminding me of a nice big kind of citrusy, zesty sort of thing. So yeah, a bit of passion fruit, good bit of mango, and also a wee bit of lime. So yeah, I like how that goes together. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the aroma of this one. Let's have a taste and see how we go. So yeah, no, that's it, tasting time. So this one, as I say, is the Crazy Sister, a New England IPA, 7% ABV. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, straw, cheers, na zdravie. Yeah, this is really nice. Big, soft, kind of creamy New England IPA. A lot more oaty leaning in the flavour than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, backbone of the, and it's also got that big just juicy fruitiness too. Not quite as floral as I thought it was going to be, a bit more grassy, but everything goes together really nicely in this one. This is the first time I'm tasting a New England IPA from Reservoir Dogs, and I have to say I am quite impressed with this one. So yeah, I like it. I do like it. Yeah, let's break this down and describe it as we always do. So a little bit of fresh bread crust again, you can feel that in the backbone. Nice kind of crackery sort of vibe, like a Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. And then yeah, on top of that, the soft, fresh white bread, like that fluffy fresh white bread there from the barley malt. On top of that, you can feel the wheat just thickening out the layer, thickening out that whole bready layer. But toward the back of the palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of typical wheaty bitiness that you expect of the style. But for me, down the middle line of your palate, there's a lot of oaty creaminess in there and a little bit of that oaty dryness too toward the edge of the palate. And just a little touch of a Werther's Original note in the very centre of the palate there. So yeah, malty side of this beer is done really well. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things. So yeah, the green component for me, a little bit earthy in the back corners of the palate, but that takes a back seat. As you move further forward, you do get a nice bright floral aromaticity out of this one. Then round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy for sure. So I do like how all of that goes together in this particular beer. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the green component of this one. Let's focus on the fruity side of the beer. So again, this one is showing that typically Slovenian oily fruity character, which I really, really enjoy. Yeah, for me, at the back of the front third of the palate with this one, at the back of that front third of the palate, the fruity side of things, there is a little touch of passion fruit there as you move further forward, bit of juicy mango, and also a kind of soft, also a little bit of a sort of soft apricot type vibe to it. But yeah, it has got that nice little bit of tropical backbone, but as soon as you move into the front half of that front third of the palate, it's got a little bit of a more kind of gooseberry, melony, limey character to it. So again, it does actually remind me a little bit of the Grim Reaper that we had earlier, but just, in New England form almost. So yeah, I think they must, Reservoir Dogs, they must like that more kind of gooseberry, limey, melony sort of flavour in their in their IPAs, because it really comes out quite nicely in this, and it actually builds a good bridge with the grassy side of the green component in this beer too. But it gets a thumbs up from me. Sufficiently impressed with the New Englands, or if this is representative of the New Englands that Reservoir Dogs are now doing. I think that's a good sign. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour. Let's round off on this one with the mouthfeel then. So yeah, for me, mid-body beer right in the middle of the spectrum, smooth carbonation, feels nice and clean, but you still get a little bit of that Slovenian oiliness that I was talking about earlier. This is a standard 30 IBU beer, no doubt in my mind about that. The malt base, as we said, is very, very smooth. There's a slight degree of sweetness to it as well, and also some creaminess. Then you've got that nice oily, fruity character coming out of this one too. But yeah, overall, I really do like how this beer goes together. If this is representative of what Reservoir Dogs have got in their armoury in terms of New England's, I'd be curious to try more. So yeah, let's leave it at that. This was the Crazy Sister New England IPA, 7% ABV. That's the end of tasting number 3. We'll be back with number 4 in just a second. So yeah guys, let me just show you the perspective where I'm filming from. As you can see, that lovely black wallpaper with the Reservoir Dogs symbol on it. I think that's really cool. Then we've just got the view up the other side of the bar. There are other people outside, but of course I came in to film where it's quiet and things. You can hear the crickets going as well because it is a little bit later at night. But yeah, we've just finished tasting number 1. We'll go on to tasting number 2 in just a second. Alright guys, so as you saw at the back of the bar outside, they've got those lovely big pizza ovens, but I'm here a little bit later on, so obviously everything has kind of shut down for the evening. But yeah, a few different types of pizza here. So the Margherita, the Diavola, the Classica, the Speck. So yeah, all kind of classic ones. And then the other two, the Mortazza and the Regina. So yeah, the standard price for a pizza in Slovenia is between about €9 and €12 at the top end of things. So 9 to €12, that's roughly about £8 to £11 sterling maybe, and in dollars that is going to be about $10 to maybe $13, something like that. But yeah, the pizzas, it would have been really nice to try one of those, but as I say, unfortunately we are here later in the evening, but I'm sure I'll be back at some point to do an interview with some of the guys for the Meet the Brewery segment. But yeah, this is the pizza menu that you'll get here at Reservoir Dogs. Alright guys, well, time for tasting number 4. And strangely, this is going to be the strongest of the 6 beers that we try tonight, but it's not the darkest. So yeah, for tasting number 4 then, we are going to have a look at the Mea Culpa. So this is described on the menu as an Imperial IPA. It comes in at 10% ABV, and I honestly can't remember whether I've tried this one or not. I really don't know. It might be one of the few that I've not, but I certainly recognise the name of this one. But anyway, we'll have a go at it nonetheless. So as you can see, this beer once again poured with over a finger of a frothy kind of cream coloured head. That has just faded away now, but you can see the colour of this one is a lovely, very light sort of amber note. And yeah, it's not the darkest amber that you're going to come across, but as we said earlier, the colour of beer depends on the type of malts used and also the length of your wort boil. So yeah, West Coast, this one obviously by appearance is going to be a West Coast IPA because of that lack of haze and the colour and so on. But yeah, I think this should be pretty nice. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, as you can see, 1 or 2 big bubbles and a few little ones just kind of popping up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty damn nice. Let's have a look at the aroma of this then and just see how we go. That's quite interesting. I mean, straight away with this one, you can smell big oily boozy characteristics, and straight away again you notice that this is a West Coaster. So let's just look at that. So I'm just trying to get it to come out of the glass that wee bit more. Yeah, this one again is at that point where there's so much early edition hopping that it's almost kind of minty and fresh to a degree. So yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business in that sense. But yeah, the malty backbone of this one, there's a little bit of a kind of fresh, you get a little bit of that kind of fresh hedgehog bread crust to it, absolutely. Some soft white bread in there, definitely a wee bit of that wholemeal bread, but you can smell the big boozy, the big boozy kind of brown sugars in this one. And I would say, I do get a little bit of a straight up caramel out of this one, and it's actually quite a bright caramel as well. It doesn't come across as being too kind of highly caramelised or treacle or anything like that. It's actually quite a bright, sweet caramel. Definitely a little hint of like a McVitie's digestive biscuit in there as well. And yeah, that's really interesting. But yeah, I do get some really nice, as I say, I do get some really nice just boozy, caramelly and biscuity notes out of this. But I will say, with the aroma, the malty side of things, it doesn't smell quite as boozy as it is. It's 10% ABV this, so it's an absolute monster. I don't think we need to say anything else about the malty side of this one. The more that I smell it though, I do get a little bit more kind of honey out of it. But yeah, that's quite interesting. On the green component then, let's look at that. Yeah, on the green component then, for me, there's a little touch of earthiness there, but it's actually got quite a nice, bright and fresh floral aromaticity, which is really nice. I like that about this one. It doesn't smell madly bitter, and you know, for a 10%er you might expect a lot of Centennial and Chinook and stuff, so that deep piney resin, the slightly spicy floral aromaticity. But no, this one comes across as being very fresh and bright and floral in its green component. There's definitely a little bit of a lighter sort of grassy thing going on in this one, but yeah, it really shows you a very nice just bright green component. So that's a little bit of a surprising thing with this one. Let's look at the fruity side of things. Yeah, fruity side of this beer is quite different too, and again I keep getting a little bit of this almost minty fresh thing out of this one. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of this one, I do get quite a bit of that limey, zesty kind of note out of it. And there's a wee bit of I think there's a wee bit of pineapple or something in this one too, but definitely that melony, limey sort of thing for sure. And then there's something kind of tropical behind this too. I actually can't remember again. I had a little look for the hop profile of this one. I couldn't find it, but yeah, as I say, a bit limey, a little bit limey, a little bit sort of you know, kind of melony as well. Yeah, really interesting this one for me. It just makes me want to try it. The fruity side of this one is really quite unusual, but like I say, this one, the thing that jumps out of the glass at you with this beer is the floral side of things. It's got that lovely, bright, floral, grassy note to it, but not too pungent on its malty side or its fruity side. But I think we should have a taste of this and just see how we go. So yeah, this is the Mea Culpa, 10% West Coast West Coast Triple IP, I guess we could say, from Reservoir Dogs here. I think we could say, well, we can say Imperial IPA, but let's just taste this and see how we go. Sláinte, skål, cheers, na zdravie. Oh yeah, that's nice. One thing I will say about this one is it's incredibly light and drinkable for a big 10% thing. It covers its alcohol very, very well. That's dangerous. That is dangerous. Yeah. It's a very, very well done beer though, but I wouldn't expect anything less. I know what this brewery is capable of. But yeah, this is pretty good. It gets a big thumbs up from me once again, and that's not just because it's 10%. I think it is nicely done. Let's break this down though and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, backbone of the beer is definitely, as I said, that kind of fresh hedgehog roll bread crust sort of thing. You definitely get that. On top of that, there is a kind of thin layer of quite crisp fresh white bread, and then you get the sort of more dense layer of the wholemeal bread coming out of this one, which I think goes together really, really nicely. On top of that, you've got a circle on that middle third of your palate. You get that nice little circle in there. You get that nice circle in there, which has a little bit of kind of biscuit in the base layer, and the McVitie's digestive biscuit spreads toward the edges of your palate in that middle third of your tongue, but in the dead centre of your palate, it's a straight up kind of boozy caramel. But I would say that the caramel you get out of this beer is really quite bright in that sense. Like I say, it's a very bright, sweet caramelly note that you're getting out of this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is pretty damn nice. Yeah, I think that's all we need to say about the malty side of this one. There's maybe one or two little woody undertones to it, but yeah, for the malty side of things, I think this goes together very well, and it covers its alcohol extremely well, so a little bit dangerous, this one. On the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, it's a little bit kind of earthy. As you move further forward, it just gets a little bit herbal, and as you move toward the front corners of your palate, it's a little bit brighter and more kind of floral and things as well, which I do like. I don't get too much, I don't really get anything in the way of floral spice or a bit of a, or you know, like that kind of piney resin sort of thing. It just has that nice bright floral note to it, and I would say as well that it's not overly bitter, so I think this beer doesn't have too much in the way of early addition hops, but stylistically speaking, it is definitely a West Coaster. Round the front curve of your palate, it's lighter and more grassy, a little touch zesty too, but let's focus on the fruity side of things with this beer. Yeah, base of the front third of your palate with this one. It's really nice and smooth and bready, but then yeah, it has an interesting balance here. Toward the back of that front third of your palate, I get a little bit of that stronger, punchy, passion fruity sort of thing, but as you move further forward, it becomes a little bit more oily and mango-y, but you've got little elements of, you know, apricot and a little bit of pineapple in there too. But again, when you go into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, it's almost got that like Nelson Sauvin kind of gooseberry type thing, a little bit of a melony note to it, and that kind of Motueka, Equinaut kind of limey character to it. I wonder, could there be a little bit of Slovenian cashmere in this? I know that Green Gold Brewing like to use cashmere, and there's just something about the component, the sort of citrusy component I'm getting in a few of these beers, that makes me wonder, could there be a bit of cashmere in some of these? Just because the limey and the melony note that I'm getting out of these is quite prominent actually. But this is going to be the last beer we look at on the light end of the spectrum. We're going to go on to two darker beers after this one. So curious to see if that will carry through into the other ones. But yeah, this beer, as I say, passion fruit, juicy mango, a little bit of apricot, a little bit of pineapple, then a limey, gooseberry, melony sort of thing. But a very nice beer, dangerously drinkable for 10% ABV, needless to say. Yeah, to round off with this one, with the mouthfeel then. Yeah, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied, smooth carbonation, lovely and oily, very clean, as you often get from these Slovenian beers. IBU wise, I think this is maybe 50 IBUs. It doesn't blow the head off you in terms of the bitterness. The malt base, as we say, a little bit crisp underneath, nice and smooth, and a little bit of a kind of oily sweetness to it as well. On the fruity side of things, quite well balanced between the tropical and more kind of lemony, limey, zesty kind of things. But yeah, it's got a really nice balance to it, this one. It definitely comes across as one of these more modern West Coast IPAs, if we can say that, just because it doesn't have the big bitterness to it. But yeah, it retains everything else about the flavour profile. So I think this recipe, I'm pretty sure this one was about when I reviewed the Reservoir Dogs beers a good few years ago in the sit-down reviews, but it feels as if it maybe has been, with the bitterness, it feels as if it has been modified to suit the new kind of generation, if we can call them that, of craft beer drinker. But yeah, I think we can leave it there. The Mea Culpa 10% Imperial IPA. Let's go on to tasting number 5. Alright guys, so yeah, one of the really nice little touches they have in the bar here is that they have the bottles of the beer sitting in front of the tap. So many of the ones I've shown you in the fridge, they also have them in bottle form. So yeah, Grim Reaper, Crux, Single Blonde, Incubo, Crazy Sister, Conqueror, Kronberger Pils, Warrior, Little Sister, Kronberger Märzen, Starvation, Lone Wolf. This one here, the name of this one, I always forget this. So yeah, this is the Com Grano Salis, Agoza again. But yeah, the Mea Culpa Imperial IPA, the Hazy Sister, and also the Batch 50. This is an awesome beer, the one that I've reviewed on the channel before, but it's very nice. I like that little touch that they have here, the bottles in front of the taps. So yeah guys, another thing is that they do also have some absolute monsters on sale here at the bar. So yeah, the first one that they have, the Last Bourbon, a big barrel-aged Imperial Stout, that would be extremely interesting. Then the Sol Invictus, barrel-aged Quadruple, I think that would be pretty awesome as well. The Black Hole number 50, which I have tried thanks to Davor and May. The May has disappeared apparently, but yeah, the Spirit of Isla, which we saw in the fridge earlier, and also the Legena Roca. And they have these things as well, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what these are, but whatever they are pretty cool actually. But this box, I think, is pretty awesome. The Reservoir Dogs box, there you go, that is pretty nice. But yeah, some monsters on sale here at the tap room if you're interested in something a little bit special. Alright guys, well, time for our 5th and penultimate beer tasting then here at Reservoir Dogs. So we're going to start moving into the darker side of things now, and this is a beer that I tried again a good few years ago, and I think this was one of my favourite ones that I tried from them actually. And it's also a style that I very much enjoy, but that I think is a little bit kind of underappreciated today, which I think is a great shame. So for this review, we are going to have a little look at a black IPA. So this particular beer is called the Grim Reaper. It comes in at 7% ABV, and yeah, I know this is a beast of a beer, so I'm really looking forward to trying this one again for you and talking about it once again here on the channel. So as you can see and as you would expect, this beer is poured with a lovely ebony rosewood colour. It does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max coloured edge to it, which I think looks really good. But when it poured with about I would say about a finger of a lovely kind of fawn coloured head. There are 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of this one, but you can see a steady stream of small bubbles heading up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look very, very nice, and pretty much as you would expect from a black IPA. Now I'm curious to see whether this one is going to be more of a West Coast black IPA, or a New England black IPA, because this honestly is a thing now. Back in the day, the black IPAs were always quite caramelly, but they could be very roasty and toasty as well. But these days, you are getting ones that have a lot of oat and wheats in them. So yeah, this should be quite interesting to look at actually. It's been a long time since I've tried this beer. But let's take a closer look at it and see what we get from the aroma first off. Oh, yeah. The aroma from this is beautiful. That's the best aroma we've had out of all the different beers so far. Yeah, this one for me, definitely a West Coast black IPA, absolutely. Just everything goes together really nicely in this one. Yeah, big sweetness there, little touch of coffee actually too, and then some really nice kind of just hoppy notes, but also big fruity characteristics. Lovely beer this. I do remember this being very good. So let's break this down for you and describe it a little bit more kind of in depth. Yeah, so backbone of the beer, you get a little bit of that roasty toasty well-fired bread crust, but on top of that there is a lot of like sweet kind of German rye bread type character coming out of this one. It goes together really nicely. So yeah, a little bit of roasty toasty bread crust, one or two woody notes in there, maybe a wee teeny tiny touch of nuttiness or tobacco, you know, something like that going on in there, and that big sweet German rye bread character coming out of the beer. Yeah, aroma wise, this is absolutely lovely. So on top of that kind of brown bready note, as I say, there's a little tiny touch of like a coffee note to this one, which is interesting. And it's quite an aromatic coffee that I get out of this. As I've told you before, coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts that you can put in beer. They can give you fruitiness, aromaticity, citrusy character, red fruits. They're just unreal. I love them in imperial stouts. But kind of strange to get it in a black IPA, but we have had coffee IPAs on the channel before, and those have been really interesting beers. But for me, the coffee notes you get out of this are slightly aromatic, and they just give the beer a lot of depth. But yeah, on the brown sugar side of things, definitely a little bit of a toasty brown sugar. It almost comes across as being quite caramelized in a sense. There's almost a little bit of that treacly molasses sort of thing, but you also get that lovely, very sweet, kind of bright, oily caramel out of this. But absolutely a West Coast black IPA, this one. It has that big, sweet, brown, sugary component to it. From the malty side of things, just a beautiful smelling beer, this one. Very sweet, very toasty, and as I say, a little bit tobacco-y. I really like that. I really love the malty side of this one. Let's look at the hoppy and fruity side of things quickly though. On the green component, I do get a little bit of earthiness. There's some nice floral notes in there, and also a little bit of grassiness. Yeah, I think it goes together really well. Yeah, the green component of this is nice, and it suits the overall vibe of the beer. Let's look at the fruity side of things. Yeah, so for me, the fruity side of this beer, it's got a little bit of I think it's got a little bit of an orangey note to it. You know, sometimes they used to use like a little bit of Amarillo and things in these beers, or a little bit of Mandarina Bavaria. I do wonder if it's got a little bit of that. I do get a little touch of an orangey character out of this one. But at the same time, I'm getting little bits of red fruit, you know, an oily figgy kind of character. You know, I do wonder, maybe there's a little bit of Cascade in this too, because you get a wee bit of as I say, a little bit of the almost figgy, the kind of figgy raisiny notes out of this. So maybe this is like, I forget what the hop profile on this one is, but it does have a little bit of that gooseberry note. So maybe it's like Nelson Sauvin Amarillo Cascade, something like that that's in this. But it smells quite old school, and this is one of their older recipes. So that would kind of make sense, but don't quote me on that. Again, I don't know what the hop profile is in this one, I'm just speculating, but the fruity side of things is nice. Oranges, bit of gooseberry, and some nice red fruits in there. A bit of sharper raisin, the more that I smell of it, of course, but then an oily fig underneath. Take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of that, but we are going to get stuck into this now. This smells absolutely lovely. Best aroma of the night so far. So yeah, this is the Starvation Black IPA, 7% ABV, Slange, Skål, cheers, na zdravie. Yeah, Lovely beer, this one. It goes together like really well. Very, very smooth, big and oily as you would expect from the kind of West Coasty side of things. It has everything you would want from this style. I really like this. Big thumbs up from me. Not a style I get to try all that often, but I really like it. On the with the malty backbone of this one, you get a nice little bit of we'll break the flavour down for you. So nice little bit of a roasty toasty black malty backbone with this one. You get that straight away. On top of that, you've got some really nice kind of big sweet brown bready notes, like kind of German rye bready character. So that comes out really nicely. One or two kind of woody notes in there, a little bit of nuttiness, and you've also got a wee bit of a kind of tobacco thing going on with this beer. The flavour of this one really reminds me of that, the smell that you get from tobacco if you play with it in the lab, which I did on many occasions during my chemistry degree. But yeah, toward the back third of your palate, there's a little bit of a kind of roasty coffee sort of thing. It's kind of aromatic, a little bit earthy, but in the middle of your palate, you get the roasty, toasty brown sugars. There's a bit of sweet caramel in there as well, but again, it's really nice and toasted. Yeah, I like how this, I do like how all of this goes together. Yeah, I think the malty side of things is really nice in this, and the focus in this beer, of course with the black IPAs, it's the balance between the malt and the hops. So you have to focus a little bit on both with this. Let's focus on the green side of things then. So yeah, hoppy side of things for me. Nice little bit of earthiness nice little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal. As you reach the front corners of the palate, though, quite floral, quite aromatic. Round the front curve of your palate, a little bit lighter and grassy, and a wee bit zesty too. Let's focus on the fruity side of things then, the last part of the flavour. Yeah, for me, this one is quite bright and orangey, lots of nice orange out of it. There's a wee bit of a kind of gooseberry thing going on with this one. Toward the back of that front third of the palate though, you are getting a little bit of grapefruit, which is typical, and then one or two other little tropical things in there. I do get a wee bit of red fruit too, so a little bit of grapefruit and a little bit of an oily figgy note, but then on the front half of that front of the palate, orange and then gooseberry like. Yeah, this is really nice. I'd love to know what the hop bill is in this, but I think this is a very nicely balanced black IPA. Quite old school, and the further you go into the aftertaste with it, it's quite cakey. You get a lot of that kind of caramelised, brown sugary sort of thing coming out of this one. Goes together really nicely. Yeah, to round off then, mouthfeel wise. Yeah, mouthfeel wise, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It has a little bit of that oily sort of thing to it. And yeah, good bit of roasty, toasty character. If we're talking about bitterness with this beer, it's not going to blow the head off you, but I think about 60, 70 IBUs. That's both from the malty side of things and the hoppy side of it. Good little bit of, as I say, good little bit of, roasty, toasty brown sugar, but enough sweetness in there. And you've also got that nice kind of oily, fruity side to it as well. And as I've said, the typical characteristic of Slovenian beers and Slovenian IPAs seems to be that big, oily, fruity character. So yeah, that is the end of the second last beer tasting then here at Reservoir Dogs. This was the Grim Reaper Black IPA, 7% ABV. Catch you guys in a second with the last one. So yeah, another little thing that's very close to the door, you can see some of the different merchandise and things here, which is pretty cool. Some of the barrel aged beers, some of the cans, pretty cool. The bottles down here too. And then if you go right down to the bottom, you can see the merchandise. So you've got the Reservoir Dogs hat, the t-shirt, and also a little lanyard too. I'm not sure how well you guys are seeing that, but yeah, some really nice merchandise here. Always cool to put these little things in the videos as little transition points. Alright guys, well, time for our sixth and final tasting then here at Pivovarna Reservoir Dogs in Nova Gorica. So yeah, I decided to come outside because it was quite nice and chilled, and we've got this lovely background as well. So I thought it'd be quite cool to do our last review outside. So the last beer, the sixth one that we're going to have a little look at, is one that I have tried before, and we're going right to the dark end of the spectrum for this one. So yeah, this is the batch number 50 Imperial Stout. It comes in at 9.5% ABV. I've had this one before, and I've also had the rum barrel-aged version of this in the bottle, thanks to Davor and May, of course. So yeah, this beer appears exactly as you would expect from an Imperial Stout. When it poured, it had a lovely finger of a frothy, I would have said kind of medium tan head. That's faded away to just be a nice kind of thin foamy layer, but you've also got a nice little bit of ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, this one. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, but a few little ones just going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it looks very, very nice, I have to say. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Oh yeah. So, I'm going to say straight away, from first, well, my first re-impression of this one, if we can call it that, it's a lovely, smooth Imperial Stout, this. I think it's going to be like more like a kind of old school, robust Imperial Stout, but you know, it just smells absolutely lovely. I'm going to say that straight away. It's got a real depth to it, this one. Yeah, so, backbone of the beer. You can smell that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust coming out. Big sort of German rye bread sweetness to this. I'm getting a lot of that lovely sweet wholemeal brown bread, but that, I would even go further, as I say, and describe it as a German rye bread. It really, really smells like that. There are one or two little woody and nutty characteristics to this one, almost a little bit of that sweet kind of rolling tobacco sort of thing. Yeah, definitely getting that sort of vibe too. It reminds me of the Starvation to an extent. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some similarities in the malt base, because the Starvation malt base was lovely. But yeah, definitely getting a little bit of that tobacco, you know, a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of woodiness as well. Then yeah, toasty, well-fired bread crust, sweet brown sugary characters as well. And for me, the brown sugar, there's sweet caramel, there's toasty caramel, and there is a little touch of that treacle molasses sort of thing to this one. In terms of chocolatey character, you know, I'm getting a sort of 70-80% cocoa chocolate out of this one, but it is not overly prominent. This beer for me is more bready, it's more brown sugary, and there's just a little bit of that chocolatey note coming out of it. Other than that, I don't think we need to say anything about the malty side of the beer. On the hoppy side of things, a little bit of earthiness for sure. There's a little touch of floral character, but remember, the Imperial Stout is not known for its green component. And just a little bit of grassiness. Of course, if you have this beer in bottle, you can feel free to age it for quite a long time, and it's going to, you know, it's going to give you some really nice characteristics. That, rest assured of that. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. You know, you've got a little touch of that sharper raisiny note, but mainly a little bit of a juicy kind of plum. Yeah, a little bit of a juicy plum. But I'm also getting some soft black currants, a little bit of a kind of more sweet blackberry to it. But yeah, lovely smelling beer this. I really like how it goes together. It gets a big thumbs up from me aroma wise, and it's nice to try this beer again. You know, it's been a long time since I've tried this beer. We tried it originally as a sit-alone review, and then we also tried it next to the rum barrel-aged version, and that was, what, about 3 years ago, something like that now. But let's get stuck into this one again and see what we have with this beer. So yeah, the batch number 50, our final tasting then here at Reservoir Dogs Tap Room in Nova Gorica. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's just really nicely done. Proper old school Imperial Stout. You know, there are so many of these kind of pastry stouts today that use these adjuncts and essences and so on. Yeah, to go back to something like this, it's really nice, and it's also a very good way to kind of round off the evening for sure. Yeah, big roasty toasty bitter Imperial Stout. This is exactly what you want. So again, it gets a big thumbs up, but it did the first 2 times that I tried it. Yeah, let's break this down for you and describe it a wee bit more. So, yeah, first off then, backbone of the beer, roasty toasty, well-fired bread crust, big bitterness from that. That is the backbone of the beer. Middle third of the palate, you get that lovely big smooth brown bready character there. It is again like a German rye bread. Towards the front of that middle third of your palate, you're getting a few sort of tobacco-y notes, bit of woodiness. I don't know if I'd say nuttiness in the flavour. Yeah, I wouldn't say nuttiness in the flavour. A bit of woodiness, a little bit of a kind of tobacco note. Then on top of that, you've got a few other things going on. So a really roasty, toasty, well-fired brown sugar. That's the base on top of the brown bready notes. In the dead centre of your palate, you get that highly caramelised, big brown sugary note for sure. As you move further out from that, it gets a little bit toastier, a little bit sweeter. Then at the very edge of that middle third of the palate, you get that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, a little bit of that going on. But toward the back of the palate, you get some really, you do get a little hint of a kind of coffee-ish note out of this one, and a bit of dry cocoa nib. So at the back of that middle third of the palate, you know, 80%, 90% cocoa chocolate, but again quite dry, powdery, cocoa nibby notes there. A little bit of a coffee bitterness for sure. Yeah, I like that. I do like how that goes together. So a bit of that roasty toasty coffee, and it's quite earthy but a little bit aromatic. Then the 80% cocoa chocolate in there too, and a few yeasty elements like a dense doughy brown bready character on the back third of the palate too. Yeah, flavour wise, this beer I think goes together. It goes together really nicely on the malty yeasty side of things, and that of course is the most complex part and the most important part of an imperial stout. Hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice big earthiness there, and this beer does show a little bit of bitterness on the hoppy side of things. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, a little bit floral and aromatic, and that goes together really nicely as well. Round the front curve of the palate, a little bit lighter and grassy, a wee bit more oily, and yeah, for me, that works nicely. Of course, the longer you would age this beer in the bottle, the more the hoppy notes would drop out a little bit. But yeah, on the front third of your palate, fruity side of things, it is as I described earlier, a little bit of raisiny sharpness underneath, a little bit of plummy notes. As you move further forward, a little bit of juicy figgy character, then into the front half of that front third of the palate, juicy black currants, a little bit of an oily blackberry. And yeah, I think that describes the fruitiness. But the fruitiness for me isn't quite as oily as some of the ones we've had earlier on today. It's not quite as oily as it was in the IPAs, which is quite interesting actually when you consider that this is a more malt forward beer. So yeah, just goes to show you that hops and malts can do lots of different things depending on what you mix them with. Mouthfeel wise, yeah, for me, it's not the thickest of imperial stouts. It's actually almost right. It actually feels really quite light at this point. That's maybe the one thing with this. But you know, you have to remember that back in the day we were used to big roasty, toasty, bitter imperial stouts, whereas now you're used to these big, thick, oaty, creamy kind of things. But yeah, IBU wise, it's, you know, it has to be about 80, 90 IBUs. It's pushing towards the top end of that spectrum. Good bit of dryness out of it, both from the malty side and from the hoppy side of things. The malt base has a big smoothness, big roastiness, and a little touch of toasty sweetness to it. Bitterness from the hops, like I said, and you've also got some nice juicy, fruity notes, a little bit of sharpness and a juiciness in there too. But like I say, quite light in the mouthfeel for me compared to other imperial stouts that I've had recently. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. But yeah, that is the end of the sixth and final beer tasting then here at Pivovarna Reservoir Dogs. So yeah, as we always do at the end, I'll give you my final thoughts, and I'll catch you just in a second with those. But yeah, batch number 50 Imperial Stout, 9.5% ABV, a very nice beer to finish the night with. Catch you guys in just a second. Alright guys, well, I told you in the last video that was going to be the final tasting here at Reservoir Dogs, but apparently I lied. So what happened was that the guys behind the bar messaged me, the head brewer, and told them I was here, and he demanded that I was given this beer to have a little look at. So we're going to have a look at one of Reservoir Dogs' Wild Ales. So this should be pretty cool. I had a little taste already, I will say that, just for disclosure. But yeah, this one is called Aza. It comes in at 7% ABV, and it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. So it's an unfiltered and unpasteurized special sour beer matured in wooden barrels with indigenous yeasts from the wine cellar Klinec, if I have the pronunciation right. K-L-I-N-E-C, so Klinec, if I am doing well with my Slovenian. But yeah, this is pretty nice. I will say it is quite a nice solid beer. So yeah, it looks great. Let me just lean that back so you can actually see in the light. But yeah, so this beer is poured a lovely, very rich sort of coppery ginger amber colour. Not much in the way of visible carbonation. When it poured, there was no head on it at all. But yeah, it looks absolutely great. Now remember, these kind of sort of old school sour beers, I tend to call them that rather than the, you know, Berliner Weisse and Gose things, the modern sour beers. These old school sort of funky sour beers are very dependent from their, in terms of their colour, from the barrel aging. So you can see not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. It is pretty much very straight up, but you can see a lovely, lovely coppery colour to it. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then. So aroma wise, lovely, big, smooth, kind of oaky, woody backbone to it. Definitely a wee touch of vanilla in there, but you know, a hell of a lot of, you know, white wine vinous character to it. It's absolutely lovely. I really like how this one goes together. Beautiful smelling beer. Yeah, so lovely, big, smooth, oaky backbone, little touch of dryness at the back of the nose, wee bit of sweetness further forward. I do get a little touch of that kind of butterscotchy, butter candy type thing out of this one, but yeah, those white wine, you know, white, green, grapey sort of vinous notes out of this kind of dominate. You do get a nice little bit of grassiness out of the beer, a little bit of zestiness and a little bit of floral character too, a little hint of earthiness, and on the fruity side of things, you know, a little bit of a peary, white, green, grape, gooseberry sort of thing. So yeah, lovely smelling beer this. Let's have a look at the flavour then and see how we go. So this one will definitely be our final beer tasting here at Reservoir Dogs. Sláinte, skål, cheers, na zdravie, and thank you to May for sorting this beer out for me. Cheers. Yeah, you know, sour beers, my cousin got a little sip of this. He didn't like it, but you know, this is the kind of things, for me, sour beers are very much an acquired taste. But yeah, this is really solid actually. Sour beers for me are very much a kind of taste or something that you have every so often to enjoy. And yeah, this one definitely fits into that category. It's lovely and smooth. It's got that little bit of oily slickness that you want from these beers too. It's just really, really nicely done. Yeah, let's break this down for you. Middle of the palate, lovely, smooth, American oaky character coming out of it. Toward the front of that middle third of the palate, you get a little bit of vanilla, and then on top of that, you get the nice kind of white wine, you know, white, green, grapey, vinous notes out of it. It's absolutely lovely. On top of that, in the centre of the palate, you get that nice little circle, and that's, you know, from the dead centre, you get that butterscotch, Werther's Original, butter candy kind of thing, and as you move out toward the edge of the palate, it just gets sweeter and sweeter. It's really nice this. It's a very well refined beer, this one. It's very raw and straightforward in what it does, but the way the flavour develops is really nice. It's really smooth, very, very well done. Sour beer, this one. The other one they have in the fridge is the same beer, but it's fermented with sour cherries, so I think that would be a really interesting one to try as well. So that's maybe something I do need to look at in the future at some stage. But from the malty, barrel-aged side of things with this beer, it gives you the smoothness, the slight sweetness, and everything that you would want from this type of beer. Gets a big thumbs up from me. On the hoppy side of things, And I will point out, these beers are kind of barrel aged and things, so the hoppy character will drop out of them. But at the back corners of the palate, you do get that little bit of earthiness there as you move further forward, a little bit of smooth herbal note, and as you push toward the front corner of the palate, it's a little bit floral, and round the front curve of the tongue, just a little bit lighter and more oily and grassy as well. So yeah, I love how this this one goes together from that perspective. Front third of the palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So yeah, fruity side of the beer for me, on that front third of the palate, it's as you would expect. You've got a little bit of a kind of bright green apple sort of thing. There's a bit of an oily pear underneath, and you get a bit of gooseberry as well. But then of course you have that white wine, vinous, grapey kind of thing that just dominates the fruity component of the beer. In terms of the sourness and the sort of impact you get from the sour, this beer is a little bit sharp when you take it in. So yeah, a little bit sharp when you take it in, but it smoothens out really nicely, and for me, that is the mark of a good sour beer. These beers always have that little bit of kind of impact sourness to them, but when they smooth out and show you their woody flavours, their vanilla notes, the little bit of kind of brown sugar and things, and then the sort of vinous characteristics just kind of mellow out, that is when you see the real how do we say, the niche of these beers. This is very, very nice. It gets a big thumbs up with me, from me. So my brain is not working. A lot of the beers we've had tonight in this this video have been slightly higher alcohol, but that's Reservoir of Dogs. Crazy Slovenian people, but very good beers. But yeah, big thumbs up from me. Mouthfeel wise then, to round off. Yeah, for me, right in the middle of the spectrum, smooth carbonation, very slick, very clean, Slovenian mountain water. This alpine region of Slovenia is just absolutely beautiful. It feels very, very clean. They're using water from the city, so it makes absolute sense that this beer is beautiful that way. It's got that lovely cleanliness to it. IBU wise, I think technically speaking it's 0 IBUs, but it probably has about 5, something like this. You do get that little bit of character in there. It's barrel aged too, so most of the hoppy side of things will have dropped out of this beer. And what they tended to do with these old school Belgian type sours is add old hops so that the bitterness didn't detract too much from the kind of sour side of things. So there is a little bit of hoppy character to this one, but mainly it leans toward that barrel-aged smoothness, the vanilla notes, a little bit of maltiness, smooth hoppy character as we say, then just a little bit of an oily fruity character too as well. But yeah, this is a lovely beer. So this is the Aza 2019 edition from Reservoir Dogs. I didn't think we'd be doing a sour beer tonight, but I think that's a really nice way to round off the video. So yeah, this time I will give you my final thoughts here at Pivovarna Reservoir Dogs, but rest assured we will be back and we'll be doing a Meet the Brewer with me at some point. But yeah, final thoughts on my visit here to Reservoir Dogs coming up in just a second. Slanja just now. Alright guys, well, time to finish up here then at Pivovarna Reservoir Dogs. You might notice that it's now daytime. We actually just parked the car out the back of the brewery and stayed here for the night because it was really quiet, and yeah, we thought that was good. It was obviously a good idea when we've been drinking a few beers and things. So yeah, I had a really nice evening yesterday. Got to try some of the really old school Reservoir Dogs beers that I had a good few years ago. Trying one of their New England IPAs was really cool as well. But yeah, once again, the quality of these beers is really nice, and they've always got that kind of nice, oily, fruity Slovenian quality to them. But from what I understand, quite a few of them have a little bit of Styrian wolf in them, so they've always got that little Slovenian edge, which is really cool. But the guys behind the bar were great, Tina and Eric, and yeah, really cool that May ordered them to give me one of the special beers to try. But we actually didn't pay for this again, which was just kind of crazy. It seems to be that in Slovenia, when you get the camera out to film something and people ask about what you're doing, they're just like, oh no, you're not paying. It's crazy, I would like to pay for the beers that I drink, but yeah, you just keep getting free beers when you're doing this in Slovenia and Croatia. Just Absolute craziness. So yeah, I had a really nice time here at Reservoir Dogs tap room in Nova Gorica. What I'll do for the end of the video though is I'll just film a little kind of walkabout of the outside since it's daylight and let you guys see how it is. So yeah, enjoy that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Check out my social media, check out Reservoir Dogs social media, and we will get me and some of the other guys from Reservoir Dogs on the channel at some point for a kind of meet the brewery segment, because I'll definitely be back in Slovenia probably next year for the repeat of the Ljubljana Beer Week. Catch you guys in a second. So yeah guys, just to let you see where this place is, it is literally on the kind of back road of the brewery, because when we drove along we thought it was probably closed when we came up to it. But yeah, you can see here Reservoir Dogs tap room, and yeah, you've got the opening hours here. So you can see, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but yeah, you can make out the different times there, mainly 3 o'clock till either midnight or 11 or 10. So yeah, there you can see it. That's the wee area we were sitting in yesterday. But yeah, the brewery is pretty much right in the middle of an industrial estate. So kind of as you would expect, there you can see the flag, Reservoir Dogs, and yeah, they've got the van here. I'll just let you have a little look at the van because it is pretty cool actually. Yeah, they've got some of the artwork on the van, which is pretty awesome, I have to say. The back doors as well, and yeah, you can see, I think this is the entrance to the brewery here. Here's the flag, and yeah, there you go. Reservoir Dogs Brewery, Nova Gorica, Slovenia. So yeah, there you go. This is it. So we drove up this road, if memory serves me correctly, and then yeah, we just came in round here. So yeah, this is the strange thing. You might expect the entrance to the bar to be kind of here, but it's round the back, because we were really thinking, oh damn, it's closed. But yeah, that is your little out and about video at Reservoir Dogs here in Nova Gorica. But like I say, we will be back at some stage. Just one thing I noticed just round the corner from the tap room is that you can actually see inside the brewery through the windows, which is pretty cool. But quite a few breweries in Slovenia use this brand, Skrl, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not, but yeah, this company is quite small, quite local, but these guys are producing a lot of the brew kits in Slovenia. But yeah, a little look inside the brewery. Eric took me through and showed me this yesterday, so big shout out to Tina and Eric in the bar from yesterday.